Hi, good evening. Steve Adler. Got a minute? All right, so let's go through some numbers and let's talk about the numbers after we go through them. We're going to begin with the numbers on the left-hand side. Hospital admissions. Today the number is 43. That's an exciting number to see because it's so low. In fact, it's 20 below our 7-day running average. But before you get too excited about that number, remember that number here on Monday reflects new admissions 24-hour prior time. It's really Sunday's number. And Sundays are the days when people are least likely to check into a hospital. They're going to have, a Sunday with the family and be at home. And then Monday morning, then or sometime Monday, they head to the hospital. It's still a really good sign. It's been a long time since we had a number that was as low as 43. It's been a while since we've had a 7-day average, a couple weeks, as low as the 65.8 number that we see. So we'll talk about that in a second, but certainly is consistent with us having altered the trajectory. And when you think about what it is that would cause us to alter the trajectory in the city, what do you think it was? And the virus just doesn't disappear on its own. The virus numbers go down when it has more difficulty transferring from person to person. What's happened different over the last 3 weeks? What was happening about 3 weeks ago that the numbers would flatten out like this? I'd suggest to you that about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, the city, the community started wearing masks more, started being really conscious of social distancing, and probably some more people ended up staying at home when they could and avoiding large groups. This stuff works. But we'll talk about all that in a second. Look at the numbers on the right side. New cases today, 335 is the 7-day running average, 145 new cases today. Numbers probably a little bit low, again, because on the weekend it's harder for labs to process numbers and all that kind of stuff. Still, I'd much rather see 145 than 845. Don't want to get too excited about it, but it is a good number for us to see, substantially below the 7-day running average. I was also looking at one of the tweets last night from one of my colleagues, Ron Nirenberg, mayor in San Antonio, and he was looking at their numbers, and he issued a tweet that expressed concern in San Antonio that they might be seeing a surge associated with the July, that at this point now would be associated with the July 4th weekend. I hope that's not true. I hope San Antonio's numbers continue to flatten out the way that ours has. I hope that was an anomaly. But like I say, I'd rather see 145 than not. Look at the numbers in the middle. Those are the 7-day running averages for hospitalizations, ICUs, and ventilators. The 7-day running average for people in the hospital is 476. Tonight, we have 480 people in the hospital. So our number tonight is about our 7-day running average. Remember, the number has been higher than our 7-day running average, indicating that we've been going up. Now it's equal to the 7-day running average. This number is tonight at 480 people in the hospital is pretty much at our 7-day running average. That's also a good sign. ICUs, which would be a trailing indicator from hospitalizations, you wouldn't expect to fall into line as soon as hospitalizations does. Hospitalizations in ICUs, the number tonight, 158. Which is also pretty close to our 7-day running average. And then the last one is ventilators. This is the one that is the farthest out leading indicator other than deaths. 102 7-day running average, 108 people tonight on ventilators. So a little under a quarter of the total people in the hospitals right now are people that are on ventilators. Let's go ahead and take a look at the second dashboard. These are both on the city's website. You can see that those 145 new cases today take our total up to 17,791 total cases. Number of deaths tonight is 209. 209 is up from the number yesterday, which was 203. So 6 more people have passed away. You know, in our city right now, in the last 2 weeks, we have suffered probably a third of the total deaths that we've had the entire time of the virus. About a third of them have happened in the last 2 weeks. Numbers go up, more people end up in the hospital. The more people that end up in the hospital, more of them are going to end up on vets just because there's more there. And if there's more there, more people are going to end up passing away. That's just a numbers mathematical issue. So the greater the number of cases that we have in the community, the higher the virus load, more people are going to be in the hospital on ventilators and are going to pass away. And that's what we're seeing right now. Now, as these numbers level off and we start having, hopefully, fewer and fewer people in the hospital, then deaths, as we move down hospitals, then vents will go down, and then deaths. That's how it should work, and that's what we want to see. Those are the numbers. Let's go ahead and take a look at the numbers from Dr. Escott, his charts. It's just a way graphically to see the kinds of numbers that we're looking at. The blue line, these are hospital admissions that we look at. The blue line is the actual number for the day. The yellow line is the 7-day running average, which is what we really pay attention to, because there'll be numbers that are much higher. You can see them, or they're lower. But that yellow line tells us about how we're doing on a 7-day running average. You can see today's number, the blue line, goes way down, but the 7-day running average also goes down, but not to the same degree. But you can see that yellow line, and you can see how our behavior in this community has a very real impact on the amount of virus that's out in our community and the number of people that get sick. All right, go to the next chart. I like charts in addition to the numbers because then you can see graphically. 3 charts. This has hospitalizations. It has ICU in orange in the middle and ventilators in gray. It's just another way to check, but you can see how each of these numbers, the hospitalizations, the ICUs, and the ventilators, all beginning to flatten out a little bit. Of course, the last one to flatten out will be the ventilators, because that's the trailing indicator. But you can see that the daily numbers becoming more in line with the 7-day moving average. Okay, now let's go ahead and I think now we're going to take a look at Dr. Myers, Lauren Myers' website. This is the University of Texas Modeler. She and her department have been just great for us. You know, when we were back in May and the governor was opening up the economy, you know, at the time I said happening a little too fast because we haven't had the 14 days with a decrease in infectivity in the city. We don't have contact tracing or testing in place. I said, but, you know, if the governor's going to open it, at the very least, we're going to continue to monitor the data. And if it looks like something is about to have a really high trajectory, working with Dr. Myers and the modelers, we'll know early enough to be able to shut it down as a community by our behaviors. And that's what we saw. That's when we started making the appeal to the governor to go ahead and make it mandatory masking, because we had numbers, the very early indication that these numbers were going to be heading in the wrong direction. We absolutely had to act. So even though our ICUs are a little stressed right now and people are tired, we did find out early enough for the community by its behaviors to impact it. Anyhow, thank you, Dr. Myers. This is her website that anybody can go to. The number in the left-hand side there, 0.81, is the R0 number. Tells us how many people get infected by one person. You want that number to be less than 1. You want it to be a lot less than 1. so that you can have one person give it to fewer than one people. If that's what happens, ultimately, the virus will die out, because with each generation, it's fewer and fewer people that get infected. If it's over one, then every generation there's going to be more and more people. So you can see that number, 0.81. The probability of the epidemic is growing, 28%, which means that it is 72% likely that the epidemic is not growing. The epidemic is declining. We have less infections now by the model than we had before. Let's look at that first chart. This is the actual number showing you hospital admissions. That's what those green dots are. The 7 is the 7-day moving average. You can see this takes us up to where we are today with today's numbers. You can see all the gray lines that are off to the right. Those are all the probabilities. The turquoise line is the median line, the mean line. The average line of all those little lines, and you can see at this point, probably more likely than not, that if we can hold on to what we're doing, we can get that line to decrease. If we even do better at what we're doing now, you would expect it to move down even further. But there are no guarantees. Some of those gray lines go up, and that's a possibility too, just not as likely right now. Go to the next chart. This next chart shows you hospitalizations in Round Rock, same kind of thing. Remember, we were trying not to get to 1,500 beds. We were starting to skyrocket pretty fast, and we tripled our number in just a few weeks in June. But now it has begun to level off, and again, we have a number that's flat, maybe even tailing down a little bit. If we keep doing what we're doing, then it's more likely than not that's what happens. But we have to keep doing what we're doing. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's go to the next chart. The next chart on her page is the ICU patients. Remember, we're trying desperately to keep that number below 200. That enables us to be able to handle our ICU patients without doing any kind of real extraordinary surge. Issues still with staffing. There's an opportunity for people to volunteer, get their names on a list, doctors and nurses, just in case you're needed. But I just wanted you to see the same relationship with respect to ICUs. Okay, and then the last chart that we have on her page talks about that R0 score, where we were about 0.81. That was a range from 0.5 to like 1.4, but 0.81 is kind of like the median or the average. And you can see we're below that one line, the value of 1. Above that line, the virus is going to spread. Below that line, the virus eventually will get increasingly less frequent. All right, so let me talk for just a second about these numbers, because it's real important. We haven't had a city in the United States yet, I think, that has done a really good job with this virus. There are some that didn't react soon enough, were kind of cavalier at the beginning, and their numbers went up and peaked early, and then they've worked really hard to get the numbers to go down. New York is an example of one such place like that. Seattle, perhaps, an example of a place like that. Then you have other cities that watched that experience, were really smart, and said, we're going to learn by what everybody else has done. We're not going to let that happen to us. And they jumped in and they showed the discipline very early, and the virus never really took hold. It was in the community, but never really took hold and multiplied to the extent as those other cities. That would be a city like Austin. But what we find is that whether a city initially went up and came down, or whether the cities kind of stayed down at the bottom like us, eventually people in the community look and say, well, we're at a place right now where I don't see a lot of this virus. So therefore, the virus may have gone away, or maybe it's not that big a deal. Maybe if we're all real quiet, we could go about the rest of our lives and the virus won't notice that we're around other people, that we're close and we're not wearing masks. Maybe we can fool the virus. But the truth is you can't. And what's happened everywhere, it seems to me, is that the community relaxes too much, goes about because it desperately wants to live the kind of life that we used to live. And people start not showing the discipline, and then the numbers start going back up. And that's what you're seeing happening in Austin and in Texas, in Arizona and Florida. I think there are like 15 states right now that have numbers that are going up. Even some of the areas where they had the peak early and then it went down, and then they were down, and then they started trying to phase in the economy again, even after watching our experience, are now pulling back on the openings of their economy. And the standard for where it's successful and where it's not successful, more than any other indicator to my eye, is those areas where people are religiously wearing face coverings. Now, it's going to be a while before we get a vaccine for this virus, which means we're going to have to settle into a way that we can live with this virus all around us. This virus that is in our community, hopefully going down to lower and lower numbers, just waiting for the opportunity to jump from one person to another person. It gets a lot easier when people are closer together. It gets easier when people aren't wearing masks. That's what this virus is waiting for. And the question is, the defining issue for a community is, we know we can show the discipline when it's looking like the trajectory is going way up and our hospitals or ICUs might be overwhelmed. Because we've done it. We did it back in March and April, and it's looking like we're doing that now. The real test of character in a city is whether a city can maintain that discipline when you can't see the virus, when you're not screaming up, when your ICUs are not in danger, when your hospitals are not in danger. Can you maintain the level then? Because then what you're fighting for is not necessarily to protect your ICUs from getting overrun. What you're trying to protect then is the ability to be able to keep businesses open, more and more businesses open. Let more and more people participate in an open economy. What you're fighting for there is trying to keep the virus so low in the community that it can't spread into really vulnerable populations like nursing home populations, so that you take the whole community virus load down far enough so that the susceptible and vulnerable populations aren't at risk in the same kind of way. The question is, can we, when the virus is headed down, redouble our efforts if it means that we have a better chance of being able to open and sustain schools? This is the real character. I mean, probably it's easier for a community to get engaged when you see the emergency room physicians like we did with fears in their eyes. It's easy to get motivated. But when they're not doing that, we don't see the virus, can we in fact keep our feet on the brake? Can we do this for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, however long it takes for us to get a vaccine to help with this virus? Well, that's what we're going to be focused on as a community. I want everybody to not get too excited about these numbers that look like they're heading down. I noticed them. Can't take our foot off the brake. As soon as we do, I will promise you that 3 weeks later, we're going to start seeing something start screaming up again. And we have to go through this thing all over again. This is not going to be perfect for us because our entire state is not mirroring us at the same time. And people move back and forth between cities. Other states are not going to be mirroring the same experience we are. There's not a kind of a national plan for this and a national mask order, which means we have people that are living in states right now where their governors are suing mayors that put in mandatory mask requirements. People from those states visit our state. People move around. So we have to show extra discipline here in Austin because we don't control all the variables that we face. So this is not a political issue. It's just a statement. I've heard people argue about whether or not masks make an impact or don't make an impact. Go back, if you're ever in a discussion like that again, all you have to do is tell people, look what happened in your city in Austin, and just show them the graphs that we were just looking at. Because the only thing that changed in our city here over the last few weeks, primarily, is that people started wearing masks more, social distancing, not being in big groups as much, but but mostly masks, I think. But anyhow, let's keep that up. Right now, the lines are going in the right direction, but still, the virus load in our community is too great, which means when you go out, you're still going to run into too many people that have the virus. So we have to keep this going. I got asked the question the other day, the young folks that are still disproportionately being represented in our new cases and also showing up in our hospitals. What the thinking is that there's less impact on them, so they're paying less attention to it. But the impact on them is really not less. There was a poll that just came out here today by NASDAQ. And it asked people of different age groups whether they were losing income by virtue of the virus. And as it turns out, that Generation Z, which are a group of people that are 23 years old and younger, Generation Z, have the highest number of people who answer the question by saying that they've lost income because of the virus. 61%. Saying that they had. The next most highest generation were the millennials, ages 24 to 39. They said that 57% of them said they had lost income because of the pandemic. And as I think about that, that's probably true. I mean, the industries that are hit hardest in our city right now, among them is probably the hospitality industry. So it's the people that are working in our restaurants and working in our bars and working in clubs. It's the hospitality industry in our city that's probably hurting as much, if not more, than any other. And it has a lot of young people in it. I mention that just because I want even the young people to be really engaged in what we're doing and keeping their foot on the brake, because that's we've seen in the past is the first group to really start relaxing and wanting to go to bars and wanting to be with each other. And I remember what it was like when I was 24 years old. But this is now the time to fight, to try to keep the economy and those jobs working. And with that, now that I've lectured everybody like dad too much, I'm going to close this out. Some of us are grandparenting during this pandemic. Some of us by choice, others not. We're getting to spend time though with grandkids. I am here. My granddaughter Remy and grandson Asa have been with Diane and I here for the last 6 months, and it's been just incredible. Suryati, who is 6.5 years old, has the wonderful opportunity to be at home with her grandfather, which is wonderful for him. He is recovering from a mild stroke. Suryati is an important part of his recovery. She spends time making him laugh and making him baking for him healthy treats. Here is Granddad and Suryati. Doctors might be good, medicine might be good, but right now in this grandfather's life and in mine, probably granddaughters are exactly what the doctors ordered. And with that, I say good night. You all take care and be safe.